Hello and welcome to Express Sports Podcast. You're listening to Game Time with me, Mihir Vasavda, and joining me as always is Rahul Pandey. And geez, what a day to be recording this. It's been just a couple of hours since India lost to England in the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup, and we don't know how to react. Of course, there's so many talking points. This just feels like the Germany 7, Brazil 1 result in the World Cup semi-final from 2014 just has that kind of magnitude to it. But for India, the repercussions could be even severe because, already talks are on about the post-mortem is all about the road forward for the Indian team, what to do with the captain, the coaches, the senior players in the team, whether there should be a total change in the attitude in the way India approaches T20 cricket or white ball cricket in general. There's so many talking points, which of course we'll be talking about one by one in the next 30 minutes. But before I get to Rahul, well, the two Pandays, Rahul here and Devendra Pandey in Adelaide, they got together for a quick chat, for a very quick reaction to India's defeat to England in the semi-final. So we'll play that first, and then we'll get to you, Rahul.
A 10-wicket defeat, and that is how India's journey at this T20 World Cup was brought under the curtains by England in the second semi-final at the Adelaide Oval. And joining me all the way from Adelaide is Devendra Pandey. Devendra bhai, that was a stamp on the authority from England, and it was a complete takedown of sorts for India, wasn't it?
Yeah, complete assault, one-sided. India never got a chance to come back, and for me, it's all back to the square one. हम जहाँ थे वहीं आ गए हैं. Last World Cup we lost to Pakistan. Now this year with England, so the whole planning, everything has come to a halt now. क्योंकि जैसे अब लगा था कि under Rohit Sharma team will do well. इतना बातें हो रहा था कि मेक रोहित शर्मा द कैप्टन, ही विल विन अस द बिग चैंपियनशिप. सैडली आई थिंक वो नहीं हो पाया, और अभी और आगे मुझे लगता है रोहित शर्मा शायद पता नहीं कंटिन्यू करेंगे कि नहीं करेंगे कैप्टनसी को लेके भी, क्योंकि अभी नेक्स्ट 2 years डाउन द लाइन जो वर्ल्ड कप आएगा, वी माइट सी अ न्यू टीम ऑल टुगेदर. न्यू मतलब कोर प्लेयर्स तो रहेंगे, पर लुकिंग एट द थिंग्स नाउ, आई डोंट सी रोहित शर्मा, अश्विन, भुवी माइट बी पार्ट ऑफ दैट टीम. विराट कोहली इवन वी डोंट नो whether he will be part of team, but sadly it's again back to the square one for us कि जहां थे वहीं के वहीं खड़े रह गए.
एक बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस दोनों टीम्स के बीच में उस पावर प्ले फेज में ही नजर आया था, राइट? इंडिया वर लुकिंग ऑन द बैक फुट आफ्टर दे लॉस्ट केएल राहुल इनिशियली पावर प्ले में, और विराट कोहली और रोहित शर्मा की भी जो साझेदारी थी वो भी ज्यादा लंबे टाइम तक चल नहीं पाई. इंग्लैंड ऑन द अदर हैंड केम ऑल गन्स ब्लेजिंग, एलेक्स हेल्स एंड जॉस बटलर. वो जो पहला ही ओवर था, रिमेंबर देयर वाज अ शॉर्ट इंस्टेंस जहां पे पहली बॉल जो है वाइड के लिए गई थी, उसके बाद ऋषभ पंत वाज ब्रॉट इन फ्रंट एज अ विकेट कीपर, लेकिन जॉस बटलर वाजंट फेज्ड एट ऑल. उन्होंने उस बॉल को तो बाउंड्री पे लगाई, ऋषभ पंत पीछे गए, तब एक और बाउंड्री लगाई, लेग साइड पे एक बाउंड्री लगाई. पहले ही ओवर में आपने 13 रन समेट लिए हैं यहाँ पे. तो इट सीम्ड लाइक इंग्लैंड वाज श्योर कि चाहे विकेट गिर जाए बॉस, लेकिन शुरुआत से अटैक तो करना ही है, बिकॉज दैट्स द ओनली वे यू कैन टेक डाउन एन इंडियन बॉलिंग अटैक दैट हैज डन प्रीटी वेल इन द सुपर 12 stages of this tournament.
Yeah, and if you look at it's been a story itself, the whole power play. India were without any power in the first 6 overs, or which is sad because we have those such kind of players in the team who can do well, who can score quickly. If you look at top 3 batsmen are similar kind of batsmen. So ideally, at least I've been telling way before that we needed someone in the top who can get us 12 ball 30 runs, 15 ball 45 runs, because that the start is the key in this shortest form of the tournament. If you get 60 odd runs in 6 overs, it may make a hell lot of difference. You just saw today's game, what Alex Hills and Josh Butler did. उन्होंने वही किया, उन्होंने कुछ अलग नहीं किया, but start एक अच्छा मिला है. Once you have a start ready, तब बाकी लोग पे कैश ऑन होना शुरू हो जाता है. The biggest problem with this Indian team is, अब आप पावर प्ले में आप स्कोर देख लिए, अपार्ट फ्रॉम जिम्बाब्वे सब हमारा जो रन रेट है 7, 6.5, मैक्स टू मैक्स 8 गया होगा, तो विच इज अ वेरी वरीसम, बिकॉज इज अ स्टार स्टडेड टीम. सब बड़े नाम खेल रहे हैं, ऐसा नहीं कि कोई रूकी खेल रहा है टॉप 3 पे. तो वो कहीं ना कहीं बहुत हैम्पर किया है इस इंडियन टीम को. आज भी अगर आप देखें तो फर्स्ट 6 overs में 38 runs, which is very less, or that too you can't say it's a very big ground. मेलबर्न नहीं है, पर्थ नहीं है, सिडनी है, जहाँ एटलीस्ट स्क्वायर तो आपके छोटे होते हैं, उसमें भी नहीं हुआ। और रियली डिसअपॉइंटमेंट हैव बीन रोहित शर्मा। अभी रोहित शर्मा का रन लगा ही नहीं ये पूरा टूर फ्लॉप गए हैं, व्हिच इज वेरी स्ट्रेंज। रोहित शर्मा का हम इतना लेटली नहीं देखे हैं, पर इस बार देखने मिला है। और इवन केएल राहुल का कंसिस्टेंसी विल बी क्वेश्चन नाउ, क्योंकि आप 2 मैच खेलोगे, बाद में नहीं खेलोगे, तो भाई साहब ऐसा तो नहीं हो पाएगा, क्योंकि देयर आर सो मेनी पीपल आर वेटिंग इन द विंग। पृथ्वी शॉ, ऋतुराज गायकवाड़, टिल एक्सटेंड ईशान किशन है, संजू सैमसन है, तो उनको भी तो चांस आपको देना पड़ेगा ना। तो देयर लॉट ऑफ हैमरिंग विल गो आफ्टर दिस वर्ल्ड कप फॉर श्योर। बट कहीं ना कहीं आई थिंक राहुल द्रविड़ ने भी एड्रेस किया हुआ, पहले जो 6 ओवर थे हमारे वैसे नहीं तो जरा भी नहीं गए। वेरी डिसअपॉइंटिंग फ्रॉम इंडियन टीम।
बिल्कुल, उन्होंने ये मेंशन किया ही था पोस्ट मैच प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में। लेकिन एक और फिर बात आ जाती है कि जो एंड में रिपेयर वर्क था, हार्दिक पांड्या ने किया तो कमाल का काम था, क्योंकि शुरुआत में उनको भी एक स्लो स्टार्ट मिला। 13 रन शायद उन्होंने पहली 15 बॉलों में लगाए और आखिरी 18 गेंदों में 50 रन मारे। लेकिन दैट वाज आल्सो टू बिग अ टास्क फॉर हिम, क्योंकि शुरुआत में ही मिडिल ओवर्स का जो फेज था और पावर प्ले था, वहां पे इंडिया ज्यादा रन नहीं बना पाए थे। एंड देन फॉर टू आस्क योर फिनिशर्स, चाहे वो पंड्या हो या पंत हो या कोहली भी जो आखिरी के कुछ ओवरों में थे, टू आस्क देम टू बेल द टीम आउट टू 180 और 200 प्लस टोटल, वो तो बहुत बड़ी आस्क हो जाती है। ऑन दी अदर हैंड आई थिंक एक जो मेरा आपसे सवाल था, क्योंकि टेलीविजन पे हमें उतना पता नहीं पड़ता है कभी कभी, पहले ओवर में भुवनेश्वर कुमार की कुछ एक गेंदें हरकत करती दिखी, लेकिन आई डोंट थिंक देयर वाज मच हिंट ऑफ अ स्विंग और मूवमेंट। और वो एक ऐसी चीज है जिसपे इंडियन बॉलर्स थ्राइव किए हैं इस टूर्नामेंट में अभी तक।
या बिकॉज वेदर भी वैसा नहीं था जैसे सबको लगा था, और पिच भी यूजुअली क्या होता है, एडिलेड ने जो जितने लोग ने चेस किया है वो काफी अच्छे चेस करते हैं। इफ यू लुक एट अफगानिस्तान, दे लॉस्ट बाय 4 रन, सो दैट कैन गिव अस द आइडिया कि क्या पिच बिहेव किया है, स्पेशली एडिलेड में। इवन बांग्लादेश, लिटन दास जैसे बैटिंग कर रहे थे बांग्लादेश के टाइम पे, द बॉल वाज कमिंग नाइसली ऑन द बैट, दैट मींस बैटिंग फर्स्ट वाज ऑलवेज अ रिस्क। बट रोहित of course, matlab England were happy to chase. Even Josh Butler later in the press conference said that कि we really won't mind chasing because उनको लगा कि चेस इसमें बेटर होगा करके। पर लेकिन ये टूर्नामेंट में बहुत कुछ इंडियन टीम को सीखने भी मिला मेरे हिसाब से। अगर यू आर राइट, कंडीशंस बहुत अलग अलग हैं, 4 डिफरेंट कंडीशंस थे हमारे पास, पर लेकिन यू आर राइट, क्या स्विंग जरा भी नहीं था। वो एक बेसिकली जो हमारे पास जो 2 स्विंग बॉलर थे, भुवनेश्वर कुमार और अर्शदीप सिंह, जिन्होंने हमको स्टार्टिंग में ब्रेक थ्रू दिलाया, वो इस समय नहीं दे पाए हमको। पर इंग्लैंड को भी क्रेडिट देना पड़ेगा, दे वर वेरी गुड बैट्समैन, दे वर वेरी पॉजिटिव सिंस द स्टार्ट। वो जाते ही एक इंटेंट लेके आए थे विच वी वरंट। मुझे तो ऐसा लगा कि जैसे अगर आप इंडियन टीम अगर उसेन बोल्ट के साथ भी खेलेगी 4x4 रिले, अगर बोल्ट साथ में भी पीछे भी रहेगा तो कितना भागेगा, पहले आगे वाले को तो अच्छा स्टार्ट लेना पड़ेगा ना। जब तक वो पहुंचेगा, बोल्ट भी कितना भी स्पीड पे आए, आप वो जो टोटल चाहिए हम नहीं ला पाएंगे। सेम इंडियन टीम के साथ यही हो रहा है करके, कि ऊपर 3 वाले आपके इतने स्लो खेल रहे हैं, स्टार्टिंग में वो टाइम लगा रहे हैं इतना खेलने के लिए, तो नीचे वाले कितना भी पुश करेंगे, कितना कितना उसमें कैपिटलाइज कर पाओगे। तो ये दिक्कत, ये सबसे बड़ा कंसर्न इंडियन टीम के लिए आगे भी रहेगा, तो इसके लिए आई एम श्योर दे विल लुक ऑन टू इट कि इसके लिए क्या वे आउट है।
बिल्कुल, और आपने पृथ्वी शॉ का नाम लिया। पृथ्वी शॉ को मुझे याद है इस आईपीएल के आंकड़े की अगर हम बात करें, ही स्कोर्ड रन्स इन द पावर प्ले फास्टर देन एनी अदर इंडियन बैटर। इस पूरे आईपीएल में उनका जो रन रेट था पावर प्ले में, वो 9 से ज्यादा था पर ओवर, विच इज अ बिग थिंग, बिकॉज जब आप स्पेशली लंबे बैटिंग लाइनअप्स के साथ खेलते हैं, जब आपकी बैटिंग 8 या 7 तक है कम से कम इस फॉर्मेट में, तो आपके ओपनर का रोल पावर प्ले तक सीमित किया जा सकता है। He can be asked to just go all guns blazing in the power play, which I think was the mentality for England, और उन्होंने आगे वहां से मैच लेके गए। So that was what happened, or what didn't happen for India in this fixture. But as far as the final match of this T20 World Cup is concerned, देवेंद्र भाई, पाकिस्तान और इंग्लैंड दोनों ने ही शानदार तरीकों से सेमीफाइनल में मैच जीते हैं अपने, और दोनों को अभी सेपरेट करना तो बहुत मुश्किल लग रहा
है। और लेकिन अभी एक और, मैं जो वेदर देख रहा था, फोरकास्ट है, तो यू नेवर नो, अगर पवन देवता ने मूड बनाया हो और कहा कि नहीं बरसों रे बरसा बरसों, तो शेयर भी हो सकता है। तो यू नेवर नो विद क्या रहेगा। बट या पाकिस्तान जैसे खेल के आई है, पाकिस्तान वो लकी विच इवन वी डिस्कस यस्टरडे, क्योंकि ना वो नेदरलैंड साउथ अफ्रीका को मारती, ना पाकिस्तान के ऊपर लॉटरी लगता। बट क्रेडिट टू देम, दे डिफीटेड न्यूजीलैंड। अभी पाकिस्तान फाइनल विल बी डिफरेंट बॉल गेम। आई स्टिल फील दैट द वे इंग्लैंड इज प्लेइंग, यू नेवर नो विद देम, और उनका मार्क वुड भी फिट हो जाएंगे, तो दैट विल बी more added bonus for them. पर क्योंकि आज जॉर्डन में डाला जितना भी बॉलिंग उनको एक्सपेंसिव रहे, बट लेकिन दे वर रेडी टू टेक दैट, बिकॉज अगर आप लास्ट 3 ओवर डेथ में डाल रहे हो तो ऑब्वियस है बैट्समैन विल टेक द लिबर्टी ऑफ गोइंग आफ्टर यू, बट ही डिड वेल. ज्यादा रन नहीं दे पाए इंडिया. अभी ऑन हाइंडसाइड आप कह सकते हो इंडिया 15-20 रन कम था, पर लेकिन जिस हिसाब से उन्होंने चेस किया तो मुझे लगता है कि इट वाज गेटेबल द वे दे वर बैटिंग बटलर एंड एलेक्स. बट आई स्टिल गुड वर्ल्ड कप अहेड, देखते हैं क्या होता है.
बिल्कुल. और एक आखिर में जाते जाते, हाउ डू यू सी थिंग्स पैनिंग आउट फॉर इंडिया? यहाँ से इंडिया के लिए अगला चैलेंज क्या है, उसके बारे में क्या बात करना चाहेंगे?
इन इंडिया के लिए आई थिंक बैकरूम जो स्टाफ रहेगा या बैकरूम जो बैकडोर्स हैं, स्पेशली बीसीसीआई के ऑफिस बेरर विल कम इनटू प्ले नाउ. दे नीड टू स्टेप अप. दे नीड प्रॉब्ली, यू नेवर नो किस पे ये गाज गिरेगी, वो देखना रहेगा, क्योंकि इट्स ऑल रिजल्ट ओरिएंटेड. आप बायलेटरल्स कितना भी कर लीजिए, पर अगर आप मल्टी जो टूर्नामेंट होती है मल्टी नेशन उसमें कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे, देन देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम, बिकॉज आवर टीम द बीसीसीआई इज गिविंग एवरीथिंग द प्लेयर वांट्स, और अगर उस पर आप रिजल्ट नहीं दे पा रहे हैं तो देन देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. बीसीसीआई इज नॉट टू बी ब्लेम, प्लेयर्स आर टू बी ब्लेम फॉर दिस, क्योंकि आपको जो बेस्ट ऑफ द बेस्ट फैसिलिटीज मिलती है, जो आप मांगते हो आपको सब मिलता है, और उसके बाद एट द एंड ऑफ द डे इट्स अ रिजल्ट ओरिएंटेड वर्ल्ड. रिजल्ट डू मैटर. बायलैटरल आप कितना भी अच्छा कर लें, हम कितना भी कर लें, लेकिन आप एट द एंड ऑफ द डे लास्ट 12 सालों से सिंस 2013 वर्ल्ड कप शेल्फ इज लिटरली एम्प्टी. तो हमने कोई ऐसा कुछ बहुत बड़ा चैंपियनशिप जीता नहीं है. हाँ, बट अभी ये है कि इनको देखना पड़ेगा वेदर दे विल स्टिक विद रोहित शर्मा फॉर नेक्स्ट वर्ल्ड कप. एटलीस्ट T20 वनडे तो एक साल भी दूर है, मुझे लगता है वो खेलेंगे. और whether Hardik Pandya will come in the picture, or some out of the blue they make Rishabh Pant as the captain of the Indian team. और दिनेश कार्तिक probably this was the last World Cup T20 at least. IPL शायद आगे खेलेंगे वो, तो उनका भी आज एक एग्जिट हो ही गया है. तो लॉट ऑफ चेंजेस बिहाइंड द सीन होंगे. तब तक आप इंडियन एक्सप्रेस पढ़ते रहना, कोशिश करेंगे हम ब्रेकिंग स्टोरी लेके आए.
Well, that is quite interesting. Rahul, of course, changes are needed. Of course, there needs to be a total change in direction. हम, of course, ये नहीं कहेंगे कि this is knee jerk, because this is something that has been spoken about for quite a while. Sriram Veera had written months ago that Kohli should stop playing, and although I know many people will just raise their hands and say, "Here, Kohli was your only performer in this T20 World Cup," but you're missing the point, I guess, because when we say Kohli jana chahiye, it also means कि that entire approach towards T20 cricket needs to change. And that's what really backfired, right? I mean, we spoken previously about how England have changed their approach, and that's what the team they are today. That's what made them so fearsome. Rahul, what's your opinion on this?
Completely agree, Mir. I think it was a symbolic defeat more than anything else. Because as you said, England changed their approach. Well, the captain who was behind that change of approach, a big face in that change of approach, Owen Morgan, was in the comm box today, and he was kind of in awe of what he was watching as well from a viewer's perspective. And the way England actually finished out this match in 16 overs, it was just the kind of defeat that perhaps people needed in order to open their eyes a little bit. When we, of course, talked about this months ago, that India's top three, comprising of KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, and Virat Kohli, they, of course, great players, great white ball players, but as far as the format is concerned, as far as the education around the format is concerned right now, even if you look at England's approach today, 200 would have been short for a team like that. Even if India would have picked an early wicket, England had a batting order that was as deep as probably number 8, number 9. And India, on the other hand, if you look at just the first 6 overs, that passage of play, India were 38 for 1, whereas England scored 63 without loss. That itself tells a story, right? India's openers never really clicked together in this tournament. And that was, one of the reasons why their strike rate in that passage of play in the first 6 overs is only better than Netherlands and Bangladesh, I think, which is pretty damning, because when you do the post-mortem of the entire campaign, India were the only team that won 4 of their 5 Super 12 games. But this point wouldn't have been highlighted if not for the semi-final defeat today. All the wins that India had in the Super 12 stages would have somehow wrapped a towel over this particular problem, which was exposed in a pretty big way by the England bowlers today. So I think, the number one problem, which you have said, Sriram Veera has also expressed in his recent article at the Indian Express, is India's approach in the power play, which is the most important passage, in a way that initial 36 delivery passage, you need as many runs as you can score because of the field restrictions. And that kind of puts the opposition on the back foot. That's what happened with India, right? The body language changed all of a sudden. We were discussing this on our WhatsApp group. Devendra, who was there at the venue, was watching it from a few more close quarters than we were from our television screen. And it was pretty evident that those first 6 overs just really pushed India back. And it is pretty much evident that that should be the first line of change, which is to be introduced in India's approach in the format going forward.
No, absolutely. And इसमें यार, again, it's important to stress कि England were playing in a fashion कि आप चाहे, like you said, कि आप 250 रन बना रहे थे, and शायद they would have chased that down as well. But the larger picture, right, the bigger picture that we need to look at from India's point of view is कि आप anyway ये जो आपका approach था last 1 साल में, last 1.5 साल में, you knew that which direction the team was headed. I think if it wasn't for Kohli's 2 sixes against Pakistan, things would have been much more clearer, much more apparent back then. We would have had this conversation काफी early on in this tournament. उस दिन कोहली के sixes लग गए. India won that match. They rode on that high for a bit. Got exposed against South Africa in the middle, of course. And England badly kind of exposed all the chinks in Indian armor. And Rahul, हम balance की बात करें, हम कितने सारे points पे हम आ सकते हैं? I think it will be a good time also to plug in all the previous episodes we have done. I mean, highlighting all these concerns that India have had. Red flags काफी सारे थे. You have the top three, right? You have Kohli, you've got KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma. Like Sriram Veera rightly pointed out in his match report, in his post-mortem, that none of the IPL franchises would really have these three guys playing together in the top three. Then you kind of move deep into the order. आपके पास sameness एक तरीके से है. Your bowling in a way has been exposed without Bumrah again and again. And all these looks kind of frustrating, more so because you have players who have the capacity, who have the ability to play in a very explosive fashion. But those players were just sitting back in India, not selected in the team. कितने मुद्दे हम उठाए राहुल इसमें से? There's so many talking points, right?
There are, and it's funny in a way, because I think for the last couple of years, Indian fans have been raving about the depth in Indian cricket a lot. Every single investor in Indian cricket has been raving about its depth. And when it comes to the selection of the team in the last 2 World Cups, we have somehow missed that point, in the sense that we have only gone for big names. I think we did a video a couple of months ago wherein we said that when India first won, or when India won its only T20 World Cup in 2007, the big point, the big takeaway from that tournament can be that Indian cricket didn't look at the reputations of players at all going into that tournament. There was a young side. A lot of the players wanted to prove a point. The format, of course, wasn't as well recognized or as well understood as it is today. But India didn't go for the big names. Right now, if you see the top three, which you have mentioned, and there's a reason why we're talking about top three, right? Mathematically, they are the players who are supposed to play most number of deliveries, who can play most number of deliveries than any other batters in that lineup. So when you talk about that position, there's a batter who had a better strike rate in the recent IPL season during the power play passage than Joss Butler, than Quinton de Kock, than any other Indian batter. And he wasn't even included in the squad for any of the bilaterals. I'm talking about Prithvi Shaw. He had a strike rate touching 160 in the power play passage. And that's important, because जब आपके पास में 7 से 8 तक लंबी बैटिंग लाइनअप होता है, then I think in a 20-over match, the role of an opener can only be restricted towards, lifting the team strike rate in that power play passage, which is what Prithvi Shaw has been doing for Delhi Capitals, his IPL franchisee. So, it just goes to show that the experiments or the direction that the team was trying to take under a new management post the last World Cup, it just hasn't, reflected in the team's squad or approach in the tournament. Thus, openers were tried after the conclusion of last T20 World Cup, and even then, India stuck with the same two that played in the last T20 World Cup. This has nothing to do with reputations of those two openers, but only to do with the approach, which was the key differentiator when it came to today's semi-final.
It's a fest for meme makers, all these things. Poor KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, and all those guys. Of course, they don't deserve to be the butt of all jokes, all the memes. But yeah, that's the situation all of them find themselves in, right? Bowling, if we look at that, there have been patches where they've all been impressive. But even against Bangladesh, it was Bangladesh who choked. Otherwise, very nearly India paid a price over there as well. In a way, also thoda sa symbolic, since you mentioned symbolic earlier in the pod, Rahul. It's also symbolic that it was Hardik Pandya who kind of tracked this team which was struggling to even connect the balls, hit and miss kiye ja rahe the. It was Hardik Pandya who actually dragged them into and showed them ki yaar, current modern way of playing T20 is this, and with his knock against England, and looks like going forward he might be India's T20 captain. At least he is the captain in the next series. So under him, I don't want to make this sound like a rant, but if India have to move ahead, if India has to look at the future, then it has to start rebuilding, and perhaps you've found your man in Hardik Pandya.
Yeah, the sample size of the matches he's captained in isn't that big, but if you look at his...
You didn't sound convinced.
No, but the last two World Cup campaigns, they've just resulted in this long streak of India performances at the knockout stages, which has been, if you say in the least, which has been disappointing for the Indian fans. So I think that streak, until it is broken, the kind of optimism that we can expect from after a World Cup tournament won't come straight away. And if you are to talk about changes, I think India made a lot of changes after the last World Cup as well, played around 30 players during the time period in the lead up to this tournament. But at the end, I think a lot of things were the same as they were in the last year's campaign. So going forward, I think Hardik Pandya, as far as his captaincy in the IPL is concerned, it was just the kind of start he needed to, his captaincy at the big stage. And I think he has the tools in his arsenal, is just the kind of all-rounder India need in the format. As you said, pushed India to a decent total under conditions today. It would have been an even bigger defeat. Has shown leadership qualities. I was attending one of the games India played earlier this summer against South Africa in Delhi, and there was an instance, I think around the 15th or 16th over mark, when South Africa still needed around 60-70 runs to win, and even though Rishabh Pant was the captain, Hardik Pandya would trudge all the way from long on to somehow have conversations with bowlers in between deliveries. And I think those are the kind of traits he has developed over time. Ashish Nehra as a coach and the coaching staff of Gujarat Titans, I think have had a big role in his rise as a leader. And I do believe that the fact that India still have someone like Virat Kohli, someone like Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul, who are still very much in the scheme of things. Rahul Dravid, of course, didn't want to comment on, and it wouldn't have been right to comment on any of the senior players' position after this tournament. The fact that he has these leaders around him, I think it will help him in his initial years. Also, I think going forward, as far as India's bowling is concerned, one of the big things to look up, and I think Shoaib Akhtar mentioned it rightly, India right now have bowlers who are a lot more dependent on conditions. India do miss express pacers in their lineup, and that's something Hardik Pandya was the quickest bowler for India at this tournament, was constantly clocking above the 140 kph mark, and those are the kind of things you need in your lineup going forward. That aggressive approach in terms of fast bowling is something that maybe the next step for India, even in the shorter format. Someone like an Umran Malik, maybe groom him over time, and there's a bigger window going into the next T20 World Cup. So I think that also may be something that Hardik Pandya is an all-rounder, as someone who tries to amp up pace during the middle overs when the conditions aren't helping. That's maybe something he would want to work on as captain during his early stint.
Right. And just before we move on and take a quick look at the final, just one last piece of rant, if I may. You mentioned Dravid, and I seriously feel from the part of captain and coach there was a serious lack of vision sometimes. I mean, they didn't want Shami in the team. He got in only because Bumrah got injured. Akshar Patel Jabi wasn't getting effective. They could have perhaps got a more dynamic, more aggressive Yuzvendra Chahal. Debatable, I know, but they could have tried. They had the option of taking along Harshal Patel. They never did that. Risks lena pasand nahi kiya throughout this campaign or in the build-up to this campaign. So I guess the only way you would have been rewarded is this. So I don't know if there is anything further we can analyze. Perhaps right now, thoda sa, when the dust settles, there will be more clarity on what's going to happen going forward. But what's going to happen, one thing for sure, is a very, very interesting final. 30 years after Wasim Akram's Ball of the Millennium, 30 years after Pakistan, with incredible parallels to the 1992 50-over World Cup campaign, they'll be playing again against the same opponent whom they defeated at the same ground. England-Pakistan, Rahul, काफी जबरदस्त मैच होगी. Arguably the two best teams in the tournament. Should be cracker. Should be a fascinating match.
Not just in the tournament, but Mir, even in going into the last year's World Cup, these two were considered as solid favourites. And these two were the teams that bowed out from their semi-final defeats against New Zealand. England lost to New Zealand, Pakistan lost to Australia. Both of them were knocked out of the Final Four stage. And this time around, they have only gone on to show that wo jo consistency rahi hai unki is format mein, that's reflected in their big stage performance. Both of the teams had some pretty big upsets early on in the tournament. England lost to Ireland, even though the match was affected by rain, but they did lose to Ireland. England ka Australia ke against jo match tha, that was washed out. Their position in the Final Four was at stake, and they very much didn't qualify, almost didn't qualify in that semi-final. Pakistan, on the other hand, lost to India, lost to Zimbabwe then, and almost miraculously made it into the semi-finals. So, when you look at these two teams, all of a sudden, after their semi-final performances, Pakistan, of course, beat New Zealand by 7 wickets. That was a comprehensive win as well. England beat India the way they did. These two just look like the absolute perfect match for this final, just because of their performance in the format over the last couple of years. England ka jo white ball revolution raha hai, they have the chance to be the defending ODI as well as defending T20 champions for the next 1 year, which will be pretty big considering the number of changes that they have made, and that will reflect on their white ball revolution, as they like to call it. And for Pakistan also, I think जिस तरीके से उन्होंने trust किया है in their players, despite all the criticism that was there on the part of everyone who was talking about Pakistan cricket just a week ago. I mean, they were being criticized like anything, and now they are in the World Cup final. So it's an exciting match. Of course, that Australia bit is even more enticing when it comes to the Big G fixture on Sunday. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you mentioned perfect match, and perfect match also because it'll be great to see Pakistan's terrific bowling versus England's, well, we've seen what their batting is. So that should be fun to watch as well. Fingers crossed it won't rain. There is the forecast for Sunday as well as the reserve day on Monday doesn't look really that promising, but like it happened during the India-Pakistan match right at the start of the tournament, hopefully the rain stays away and we'll be able to enjoy a good final. Well, thanks for listening. It's been great to have your company throughout this T20 World Cup. It's not long before we move to another World Cup. Shall I dare say the real World Cup? Because that's what will begin next weekend and we'll be back with it. Rahul, see you around next week for the Football World Cup. Shashank, well, we are running out of time, so we'll see you next week as well. Would I love to brought you in because, well, cricket and you, we know how that love story is. But yeah, and thanks to you guys for listening. We'll be back next week.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Abhishek Kumar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.